So, Miss Karen, I know you as having 25 years of experience as a business planning strategist. Can you tell other people about your experience and your successes along the way?
Sure. Yeah, I've had a great time doing this work. Entrepreneurs are great people. They do their things so well, and it's just wonderful seeing them come out on the other side. So 25 years, and I started my own consulting practice after getting booted out of a company. And so I was working in a marketing working with a marketing agency. So marketing was my first kind of core skill, if you will. And my skills have evolved over time, more based on strategy and growth and scale. I still do some business plan, startup kind of stuff here and there, but really it's evolved over the years. But from economic development programs to my own consulting firm to most recently working with the Goldman Sachs, not only the 10,000 small businesses program in the Los Angeles, Southern California region, but also Goldman Sachs 1 million Black women. And so I've got a lot of experience on the programmatic side, working with cohorts and groups organized around curriculum delivery as well. In addition, I teach at UCLA Extension. So I've been teaching entrepreneurship at UCLA since 2017, I think. So it's been a few years and enjoyed that tremendously. But I love the highs and lows of business. I mean, everybody has got to solve problems in business, and I think that's what I do most effectively is come in with the strategic insight to create some of that problem solving. And as an entrepreneur, we do have to work through it. We've got to figure out how to do it. So my insights really give that leverage to help them really take the next steps. And I've been fairly good at what I do. I enjoy it. I love the outcomes that, when someone says, I landed the client, I got this, I got that, my business grew. Um, it's always a feel good kind of thing. And so it's been some good years. I mean, just as a business owner myself, there've been some down times too, like with anything. But you make your way through it because we love doing our own thing and just constantly evolving and creating and growing. So it's been good. I have no complaints.
What is business growth?
Business growth is actually increasing your revenue by increasing resources. This means more staff, more hours, sometimes space, inventory, and even capital. So you're gaining traction based on what you have defined for business growth around your plan of action, your action plan.
What tools can a founder or CEO use to track business performance?
So business performance, whether we're talking about growth or scaling, really needs to kind of come from tools like looking at your financials. So QuickBooks is one of the first things everyone needs to look at quarterly, weekly, and assessing, what productivity looks like in the business. Other things like accountability, looking at project management with tools like Asana or Monday. Those are really good tools. And most importantly, your CRM. What production what's sales doing for the business? Where are you at on the sales cycle? How are you actually monitoring what's coming into the business, conversion rates, lead to prospect, et cetera. Just kind of looking at those numbers and getting your analytics really firm around, your sales. Because if we don't have sales, we don't have revenue, right? So that's so important. Yeah.
What does it mean to scale your business?
Yeah, so scaling is a little bit different. We start growing, and then scaling usually is about increasing revenue without out a proportional increase to cost. You want to start minimalizing your costs so that your output is stronger on the profit side. So that's what scaling means.
How do you know if you are ready to scale your business?
Right. That's a good question. It's a good question. So the assumptions are that you have already validated your offer, meaning you've got consistent sales, you have outgrown your systems, and you need to create more automated systems. You're really growing fast, meaning demand is growing faster than your ability to serve. You've got a strong team, you've got infrastructure, you've got all the pieces in place, you've hired, you've got people ready to go. So you're ready to think about how we now move into the next level with scaling.
What pitfall should I avoid when scaling my business?
First thing is really trying to do this ahead of having your operations really documented. So SOPs are tools and pieces that you need to really create some of those efficiencies around optimization. So if you don't have operations really solidly mapped out, whether service or product based, really important to make sure you've got everything, on the operational side mapped out. If you aren't really showing a profit, if profit is not really increasing based again on what your projections are telling you, if it's not increasing or if it's shrinking, that's not a good thing. Um, Strategic hiring is really important. You don't want to just hire to put somebody in a job. You want people to last with you. You want people who can help you grow. You want leaders. You want people who can think. So strategic hiring. Financial metrics. I get back to the financials. The financials are so important. Looking at those financial spreadsheets, statements rather, understanding, what is happening in your business week in and week out, making sure you're staying on track to hit the benchmarks that you're trying to scale to. So those are my pitfall advice.
Okay, so Miss Karen, so we talked about business growth and we talked about what it is. So let's take me for example and say that I started a business and let's just call it Powerhouse and it's been running successfully for some time now. How do I take my business from startup to the next level?
Yeah, yeah. That's a good question because usually at the startup phase, you're trying to identify, what you're doing, who's doing it, what are we actually offering in terms of services and products? What does that price point look like? And so usually you're beginning to think about where I want to go with this business. What do I want this business to do for me? And that's where the growth and scaling come in. We're talking about scaling, so you add value. And so typically when a business owner or entrepreneur is talking about scaling, they have a plan to exit, right? They want to move on from the business. So moving from startup to emerging means I've got to have the right tools. I need to understand my financials. I need another plan, another action plan. Most startups have a business plan, and that business plan is all encompassing and says a lot of good stuff about the business. The next step would be, a new kind of action plan that takes the business to the next level. That may be assessing your customers, looking at new customers, new methods of growth. How do we sell? Who are we going to sell to? What do we use? What tools do we need to bring now to the table as we continue to move forward? And that continues with each phase of growth because you've got an idea, you've got a plan or strategy around exiting, and that exit could be, 30 years from now, in your case, you might, I want to work this entire, I'm ready to retire. So I need to build in, revenue and have owner's equity so that I can retire, and I'm investing that money along the way so that I can retire a company or, retire and leave wealth, investments for my own family, my own children or whatever. So those kinds of things require planning along the way, whatever that plan looks like. It's not just an idea, I want to be, a millionaire or a quadrillionaire, in 2 years, but you've got to have a plan. So that action plan would be the next step.
Yes, which reminds me too of something that I hear all the time when people say that when you start a business, you also have to plan for the exit. So
Yeah.
that is pretty much where the middle comes to play, I would assume. You plan to start, you have to plan to scale and grow, and then after you hit wherever you are content with, that's when you
Mhm.
have to plan your exit.
You can plan your exit at the very start. I mean, that's okay too. I mean, if you know where you're headed and what you really want to do. I mean, there are business owners who start out, right away where they want to go with the business and what their next steps are, but you still need that plan. And so in some cases they do know where they want to hit. They hit, particularly if they're looking to acquire equity, they're going after venture capital, et cetera. They know where they want to head kind of quickly, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it takes getting to the middle to understand, who our best customers are, who our ideal clients are, et cetera. And so then you start thinking about how do I want to scale and then, exit, based on, growth and traction in the business.
Okay, so standard operating procedure. Um, what is that?
Standard operating procedures are the pieces that document work. And so you want the reason that it's so important, whether it's services or products, is because you want to have repeatable workflows that direct individuals on how to do what they do in the workplace.
Okay.
And those can be online, they can be AI generated, they can be wherever you want to house them. They can be written if you can print it out and hand it in a book if you want to do that. But your people need to understand how work happens. And so we have systems around work, like the sales management system would be, the heading. And then we've got all these pieces underneath the workflows around lead generation or engagement or discovery calls or whatever around that piece. And so there are a number of things that go underneath. And so individuals in your organization need to understand how do we do our work? And the idea being that we repeat work the same way, that we've optimized our systems and our workflows in a way where people are making less mistakes. They're doing things the same way. I mean, there's room for auditing sometimes as things change in the business. So we can certainly allow for that. And so someone really, your operations officer or manager should be looking at that documentation and comparing, the workflows to output, inputs, outputs, et cetera. So that kind of thing is really, really essential. And I really encourage the services based businesses to do this as well. They think they don't need to. You really need to. The sales piece is very critical in any business. Marketing is very critical in any business. And I really think those two pieces need to be documented well. And it often sometimes just people just think intuitively that, oh, everybody knows how to do this. Well, they may, but you really need to get into the process of really creating those repeatable steps so that individuals know how to do what to do because it's, we're optimizing, we're growing, and we want to make sure yeah, the idea being that we're looking at the workflows, around efficiency. So we want to maintain that efficiency.
So is this also like automating the system? So making sure everything is done every day because doing it a certain way is what drives success. So you have a certain department that focuses on this, automate that, or learn how to do it on a daily basis to progress the business and make
Absolutely.
sure that your outcome is pretty much predictable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's predictable over and over and over again. And so that helps optimize, and that optimization leads to getting to the point where we're looking at keeping our cost intact and even our expenses intact so that we continue to grow bottom line. And that's really why we do that. Getting to the point where our profitability is enhanced in ways where we are actually seeing uptick in our profitability because people are doing work correctly.
Okay, Miss Karen. So I have an action plan in place for Powerhouse. What else do I need in order to grow and scale my business?
Right. Great question because the plan is kind of the say telling of what you want done and where you're going, but you got to keep people accountable, right? People, there needs to be some accountability matrix, if you will. So key performance indicators are the measurable target that really sets the tone for how individuals are performing against that action plan. So usually there are metrics involved. So you have some quantifiable metrics that discuss where sales should be. So it's usually across division, and then the divisions might, apportion that to, individuals on their teams, or either it's team goals or individuals, whatever. But so you need to think about creating those KPIs to really track measurement and activity. And you can do that. That can be automated too. It's not, something that has to be so manual. So you can do that. So you may look at sales performance. You may look at marketing conversions, engagement, et cetera. You may look at overall performance management with, on the growth and development side of the business. Are people really growing and developing? What are they doing? How are they measuring up as you move forward to keep our business intact, that kind of thing. So KPIs are another good add-on to that plan of action, that action plan at that point, because you really need to enforce or really kind of adhere to some level of accountability for the organization.
So, if I understand correctly, KPIs, you could have one for marketing and sales, and you could also have one for the internal portion of the business in
Yeah.
order to keep track of how your employees are performing.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, that's correct. You would see it across the business operations entirely, even if you've got, a team of 10 or a team of, 10,000, you still want to implement KPIs that really help keep that accountability solid so that you're looking at growth based on performance, divisions, teams, or individuals. Yeah.
Okay, Miss Karen. So let's just say that I own Powerhouse for the last 10 years, and I've gotten to the point where I'm ready to pivot and try something new. And the two options that I am considering is one, walking away from the business completely and allowing somebody else to take over, or staying in the business
Mhm.
and operating it, but not as the owner or CEO rather.
Yeah.
Uh, can you tell me how I should plan that?
Yeah, so the latter, let's start with the latter, not staying in it as the head of the organization. So, you're going to start doing some succession planning. And you would start looking at, who would be next. If you've got a C-suite, you're thinking about who those next people would be, or who you would be giving consideration to based on, their skills and, understanding the organization, the cultural fit of the organization, et cetera. So that succession planning would start ahead of that and 3 to 5 years ahead of that. And you would start, you kind of grooming that individual to take your spot. And then you would take your retirement shares or whatever it is. You might maintain your shares, you might retire outright, whatever it is, you would do that. But that's a succession planning kind of thing. And I think you said if you stay in the company too, you would not be the CEO and stay in the company, or
One was walking away completely, and
walking away
then
completely. Yeah.
yes,
Walking away completely. I mean, you could sell the company outright to someone else. A valuation would have to be conducted. So someone would, an investor or an outside third party would come in and do a valuation looking at market value of the business and, how it stands financially. So you could sell it outright. You could, sell shares to, another investor. So you've got some options there. So there's lots of things you could do once that point arises. Yeah. But the succession planning is really important. So if that would be your thing, I would say you need to start thinking about who that next person would be early on.
early on with okay, the last 3 to 5 years. So I have an option of walking away completely, selling the business, or I have an option of basically being put on payroll and offer some
Yeah.
type of service for the company.
Yeah. You could retain, yeah, you could stay there and that would be something you would negotiate, with the sale of the business. Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot you can give consideration to, or you can just, like I said, just walk away,
And
go
call
go
it
to Tahiti and, live in Tahiti the rest of your life.
and call it a day.
Yeah.
Okay. So as a Q and A, I could ask all the Q's and ask for all the A's. So I promise I will let you go. But the last question I do want to ask you is, what would you say the biggest lesson was that you have learned in your career?
Hmm. Okay. The biggest lesson. Okay, I think I can answer. I would say something around really making certain that you've got, contracts in place, that kind of thing. Make sure that you protect your own assets, if you will, protecting your business and your business how do I want to say it? I would say the lesson is always about protecting yourself, uh, making sure you've got everything kind of uh,
I think I know where
intact.
you're headed, and then I'm actually going to cut you off because we're still recording. But I am going to say that I think I can relate to what you're saying, and I'm going to give you a real life example. And I'm going to give this example because I learned the lesson. But I was in a position where, as a sales agent, contracts are important. In one transaction, I decided just go for it. No contract in
Oh,
place. And next thing I know, the landlord and the tenant got together without me, and the building that I was marketing and advertising had a coming soon sign on it. Would you say that I should have protected myself a lot better than what I did?
absolutely, absolutely,
And are you
absolutely.
saying
And
that that is one of the biggest lessons you have
oh
learned?
my God. Yeah. And I think particularly early on, you meet people, you talk to them, and you think there's some trust and you really don't know them, particularly in networking environments and all that. And people say a lot and they talk a lot, and you still got to protect yourself. Contracts are so, so very important, getting contracts signed. Um, and while you still may find yourself on the outside of it, can, you do have something to take action with. You have something where you can go back and, try to, defend yourself, and you're gaining your losses back, if you will. I think that's the biggest lesson learned early on. And I think the sooner you learn that, the better, because you won't make the mistake again, particularly around money. You don't make it, you won't make it again around money. Money is, critical. And when someone's can I say screwed you out of my can I say that on YouTube?
You could say yes.
Can I say screwed you out of money? You won't do that. You won't let that happen again. It only
No,
has to happen once.
exactly.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
only has
So
to happen once. I don't care how nice, how much they're talking. And a lot of times people will talk a big game, and that's not what's going on.
yes. Yeah. So I'm assuming that's where you were headed. So I'm like,
Yes.
wait, I know this.
Yeah, yeah. You've got to protect yourself, and
Mhm.
get your deposits up front before you start working, or whatever it is, whatever the agreement calls for, before you get into any full commitment with a client, because things can go south
Real fast.
real fast. Yeah.
Yes, and we
Yeah.
don't want that.
No,
No,
no.
no. Okay, well, it was a pleasure speaking with you, Miss Karen. I definitely appreciate you for taking time out of your day to do this with me and answering questions. And I hope that there is someone who is watching this that will get just as much information out of it that I did. So I want to thank you for being a guest on Powerhouse, and you're
Thank
definitely welcome to
you.
come back.
Thank you. I would love to come back. This was awesome. It was great to talk with you. Would love to talk to your audience again. And this was just great. So have me back anytime. I'd love to do it.
For sure, for sure. All right.